The summer heat crept lazily through the old, creaking bones of the Hammond house. Sunlight filtered in dusty beams through attic windows, casting slow-moving shapes on stacks of cardboard boxes and forgotten trunks. For most, the attic was a place of clutter and cobwebs, a maze of things left behind. But for 8-year-old Jamie Hammond, it was a treasure map waiting to be explored. He tiptoed past the suitcase mountain, ducking beneath a broken lamp, his small hands pushing aside moth-eaten blankets. With every creak of the floorboards, his heart pounded louder. The attic was his favorite world, a kingdom of secrets, a pirate ship, a moon base, anything he wanted. Today, though, Jamie wanted only one thing: adventure. And so, with the brash courage of a child on summer break, he burrowed through a pile of old winter coats and found a battered wooden chest wedged against the far wall. Its surface was etched with scratches, the metal clasp flecked with rust. He knelt, fingers fumbling with the latch, breath held tight in his chest. With a groan, the lid popped open. Inside, faded photographs, a torn uniform shirt, yellowed letters tied with string, and at the very bottom, a small round medal, dull with age and dust, its ribbons stiff and brittle. Jamie lifted it into the sunlight. A name was engraved on the back: Arthur Hammond. He blinked, confused. That was Grandpa's name. But Grandpa never talked about medals. Grandpa never talked about the past at all. Jamie's heart thudded with new excitement and a strange sense of unease. He clutched the medal in his fist and scrambled back down the stairs, the attic's dust swirling in his wake. Grandpa Arthur sat by the window, his gaze lost somewhere in the garden beyond. He was a tall man, still broad-shouldered even in old age, with hands that could split logs and eyes as blue as the June sky. Yet most days, his face seemed carved from stone, quiet, unreadable. Jamie found him there, knees pulled up, medal clutched in one small palm. "Grandpa?" he asked, voice shy. Arthur didn't look up at first. He was used to Jamie's chatter, the endless questions. But something in the boy's tone made him turn. "What's that you've got?" Jamie held out the medal. "I found it in the attic. It has your name. Were you in a war?" For a moment, Arthur's expression didn't change. Then he took the medal, turning it over slowly in his rough hands. A long silence grew between them. The ticking of the old clock, the distant hum of lawnmowers, and somewhere, a dog barking. Arthur finally spoke, voice softer than Jamie had ever heard it. "Yes, I was in a war." Jamie's eyes widened. "Were you a hero?" Arthur closed his fist around the medal. "No. I was a soldier, that's all." Jamie sensed the conversation slipping away, like water through his fingers. But he wasn't ready to let go. Not now, not with this secret glowing in his hands. He sat on the rug by Arthur's chair, the medal between them, and waited. All afternoon, Jamie's mind raced with questions. At dinner, he poked at his mashed potatoes, the medal burning in his thoughts. His parents noticed. "You're quiet tonight, champ," his dad said, ruffling his hair. Jamie hesitated, then asked, "Did you know Grandpa was a soldier?" A strange look passed between his parents. His mother's smile faltered, his father's brow furrowed. "We did," his mother said softly, "but Grandpa doesn't talk about it much." Jamie pressed on. "Why not? He has a medal. Shouldn't he tell his story?" His dad glanced at Grandpa Arthur, who sat at the far end of the table, staring into his glass. "Sometimes," his dad said, "the hardest stories are the ones people keep inside." That night, Jamie lay awake in bed, the medal on his nightstand. He made a promise to himself. He would find out what Grandpa's story was, no matter what. Some secrets, he decided, shouldn't stay hidden forever. The next morning, Jamie was back in the attic, flashlight in hand, heart hammering with anticipation. He rummaged through the wooden chest, careful this time, searching for anything that might reveal more about Grandpa Arthur's past. Beneath the letters and the uniform shirt, he found an envelope marked simply, 1945. Inside were black and white photographs, each one curling at the edges with age. Some showed young men in uniform, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning in the mud. Others captured a camp in the woods, tents, fires, laughter frozen in time. Jamie held up one, squinting at the faces. In the center stood a younger version of Grandpa Arthur, his jaw set, eyes bright, a rifle slung over his shoulder. Jamie's breath caught. He'd never seen his grandfather look so alive. He brought the photos downstairs, laying them out carefully on the kitchen table. As the morning light spilled in, he traced each face, wondering which men had come home and which hadn't. His mother walked in, paused, then sat beside him. "You found those?" she asked quietly. Jamie nodded. "He looks happy. Was he?" She sighed, brushing a hand over Jamie's hair. "War changes people, Jamie. Sometimes the happiest photos hide the hardest stories." Jamie studied Grandpa's smile, then glanced toward the garden, where Arthur sat quietly in the sun. After dinner that night, Jamie slipped the medal and photos into a small box and carried it to Grandpa's chair. He hesitated, then placed the box on Arthur's lap. "I want to know," Jamie whispered. "Please?" Arthur stared at the box for a long moment. He opened it, eyes lingering on each photo, thumb tracing the medal's edge. Finally, he reached for one more item from the bottom of the chest, a folded letter, edges torn, the paper yellow and delicate. Arthur's hands shook as he handed it to Jamie. "It's from a friend. Read it out loud, will you?" Jamie opened the letter and began, his voice quivering. "Dear Arthur, if you're reading this, then I guess you made it home. I hope you did. Remember, none of us would have survived that night without you. I know you don't like medals, but you earned it. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." Arthur looked away, his eyes glistening. Jamie finished reading and looked up, searching his grandfather's face. "Who was Tom?" he asked. Arthur's voice was rough. "My best friend. He didn't make it." Jamie reached out, squeezing his grandfather's hand. "I'm glad you did." That night, Jamie couldn't sleep. The weight of the medal and the letter felt heavier than ever. He replayed his grandfather's stories in his mind. Half-finished sentences, silent tears, the way Arthur's hands trembled on the old photographs. He tiptoed downstairs and found Arthur still awake, sitting in his favorite chair, the box of memories beside him. "Grandpa?" Jamie whispered. Arthur looked up, startled. "Can't sleep?" Jamie shook his head. "I want to know more. Will you tell me?" For a long moment, Arthur said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Maybe it's time." He patted the seat beside him. Jamie crawled up, and together they began to talk. Arthur's voice was soft, sometimes halting, but as the hours passed, the stories poured out, of friends and battles, of fear and hope, of the night that earned him a medal he never wanted. Jamie listened, wide-eyed, making a promise. He would never let his grandfather's story be forgotten. Not ever. It was well past midnight when Arthur finally told the story Jamie had been longing to hear. The old man's eyes grew distant, as if he were seeing another world. A world filled with mud, thunder, and terrified young men. "It was a place called Forest Ridge," Arthur began, voice trembling but steady. "The winter of '44, coldest I ever felt. Our company was cut off, no food, no reinforcements, just the dark and the enemy, everywhere." Jamie listened, hardly daring to breathe. Arthur's fingers traced the medal as he spoke. "That night we were pinned down. I heard Tom shouting he'd been hit. There was a way out, but someone had to go first, clear a path, distract them. So I went." His voice cracked. "I don't remember being brave. I remember being scared. But Tom, he made it through. I dragged him back. Others followed. Most of us survived. Some didn't." Jamie's eyes filled with tears. Arthur looked down. "I never felt like a hero. I just did what had to be done." He pressed the medal into Jamie's hand. "It's just a piece of metal, Jamie. The real honor is remembering." Over the next few weeks, Jamie became his grandfather's shadow. Every afternoon, he would bring a notebook and write down the stories Arthur shared. Names, places, jokes that didn't always make sense, moments of laughter amid chaos. The act of remembering brought Arthur to life. He smiled more, walked a little straighter, sometimes even joined Jamie and his friends in the yard. For the first time, the war was not just something to hide, but something to honor and to heal. Jamie showed the notebook to his teacher, who was so moved she invited Arthur to speak to the class. The other kids, once bored by old people's stories, sat wide-eyed as Arthur described the night at Forest Ridge and the friends he'd lost. After the talk, Jamie's teacher knelt beside him. "You gave your grandfather a gift," she whispered. "You gave him back his story." Jamie smiled. For the first time, he felt like he'd done something important, just by listening. The Hammond family changed in ways small and large. Photos that once sat gathering dust were now framed and displayed in the hallway. Letters were read aloud at Sunday dinners. Even Jamie's father, who had always found it hard to talk to his own dad, began to ask questions. Arthur grew softer, kinder. He talked with Jamie's friends about courage, but also about fear, about how both could live side by side in a soldier's heart. As autumn rolled in, the family decided to hold a small ceremony in their backyard. They invited neighbors, teachers, friends, and even some local veterans. Jamie read a speech he'd written from Arthur's stories, his voice strong and clear. When he finished, Arthur hugged him tight. "You made sure none of it got lost," he whispered. That night, under a sky blazing with stars, Jamie understood that heroism wasn't just about medals or battles. Sometimes it was about the courage to remember, and to help others remember too. As winter crept back into Ryefield, the Hammond home filled with a sense of pride and belonging it hadn't felt in years. Jamie's speech at the family ceremony spread through the town. Neighbors came by with cookies and old war photos, and local veterans invited Arthur to their monthly gatherings. One morning, Jamie and Arthur sat together at the kitchen table, the metal glinting in a ray of sun. Arthur turned it in his hand and smiled. "You know, Jamie, I used to think this didn't matter. Now I know it's not about the medal, it's about the people who remember." That week, Jamie's teacher submitted his notebook, filled with stories, drawings, and quotes, to a national history contest. Weeks later, a letter arrived. Jamie had won. The story of Arthur Hammond and Forest Ridge would be published and shared with schools across the country. The medal, once forgotten in a dusty attic, became a symbol for the whole community, a reminder of sacrifice, memory, and the quiet courage to keep a legacy alive. The following spring, Ryefield Elementary held its annual assembly for Remembrance Day. Jamie was asked to speak, and this time, Arthur sat in the front row, nervous, proud, and more alive than ever. Jamie told the story of a young soldier named Arthur Hammond, of a night at Forest Ridge, and a friendship that saved lives. He spoke not of glory, but of kindness, fear, and the importance of never letting stories fade away. As Jamie finished, the principal called Arthur to the stage. The audience, students, teachers, parents, stood and applauded. For the first time, Arthur allowed himself to accept the thanks, tears shining in his eyes as he embraced his grandson. After the assembly, students crowded around Arthur, asking questions, shaking his hand. The boy who once played alone in the attic had helped turn a family's hidden pain into a lesson of hope for everyone. Years passed and seasons changed, but the story of the forgotten medal endured. Jamie grew older, but never lost the notebook or the lessons his grandfather taught him. Arthur lived to see his great-granddaughter born, and the family made sure she would know the tales of courage and friendship. Every year on Remembrance Day, Jamie visited Arthur's grave, the medal hanging from his neck. He would sit beneath the old oak tree, sharing new stories, reading the ones that came before, and promising to never let them disappear. Ryefield became known for its history program, for the boy who listened, and the grandfather who taught a town to remember. The medal's shine faded, but its meaning only grew brighter. A symbol not just of war, but of love, memory, and the power of one child's curiosity to change everything. And in the attic, beneath the slanting light, the Hammond family's story lived on.